Hello, my friends. Hello, everybody. We have the amazing Melissa Milloway here today, and I am very excited for the session, as I know you all are. I'm going to give Mel a quick introduction for anyone who doesn't know who she is. You probably do, but just in case, Mel has been in the instructional design space for about a decade now, and she worked her way into high tech and got a job at Amazon about 5 years ago as a learning experience designer. And after a couple of years doing that, she worked her way up into management. So now she is a learning experience design manager. But I do want to show off some of her work because she does some really cool learning experience design work. So here is Mel's site. It's melslearninglab.com if you haven't been here before. And if you go over to her portfolio, you can see some really cool projects here. So I know this is like a cool little like affiliate site that Mel and her partner Thomas built, which is really cool. There's VR stuff in here where there's really nice UI designs in here. I have her Behance site up, and you can see like these UIs aren't what you typically see when you're looking at the work of learning designers. Like this is like professional UI quality stuff. So definitely check out some of Mel's work here from her site. And some of you may know her from the This Side Up newsletter on LinkedIn. It has 65,000 subscribers, which is just kind of like mind-boggling to me, but really good. You know, there's job search and application tips. So really good content here on LinkedIn. Just look up LinkedIn This Side Up, and that's how I found it. So let's give Mel a warm welcome. And yeah, we're going to have a good session here. Oh, Mel, you're muted.
Sorry about that. Hey, just testing this out so that I don't hear an echo.
Yeah. Okay, good, cool. All right. So thank you, Mel. I hope that introduction was sufficient. If there's anything you want to add to give context, feel free. But otherwise, we can start diving into some of these questions here.
Yeah, we can start diving into things. I think that's great. You did an amazing job at the introduction.
Well, thank you. Okay, cool. So for anyone who doesn't know, we will be answering questions in the Ask a Question tab, and you can vote on the ones you want to see answered or add new ones there as we go, just so we can make sure we answer what most people want to see answered. So it looks like the question at the top right now is, what is the workday like for a learning experience designer at Amazon? So maybe we can take it as just a learning experience designer and then as like a learning experience design manager. I think getting both of those perspectives would be really cool.
Yeah, that's a really great question. And so Devlin and I were just talking about this. So I've been at Amazon for about 5 years now, and it's absolutely crazy because I think in the global perspective, I've been there longer than 92% of people, which is insane.
Wow.
And then in Seattle alone, I think it's around almost 80%. So I've been here longer than 80% in Seattle. And so one of the things that's been interesting to me is I've had 3 different careers at Amazon in general. So when I first started at Amazon, I came into Amazon logistics, and I got to be a part of launching same-day delivery in San Francisco, which was really cool. And I started as an instructional designer there. And then I moved into more of like a technical curriculum developer role, and then an LXD role, and then a learning manager role. So in our learning experience design team. And so a typical day for a learning experience designer, of like my perspective, because everyone is going to have a different perspective and every team operates differently. But a typical day would be, most people on my team have between like 4 and 7 projects. And so they may have part of their day having calls with SMEs and stakeholders, working on content outlines, and then another part of their day focused on doing design and development. So it's really like a mishmash of things because on our team, folks own the end-to-end process of learning experience design. So they'll get a project and they'll see it all the way through to delivery and measurement.
Wow, that's cool. I think we'll get into some interesting discussions about that because there are some questions about like the makeup of these teams. And I think people maybe were expecting, I don't know. I know on some very like, you know, you're doing the design, you're doing the development, you're doing the evaluation, but it sounds like on your team specifically, like these people, yeah, they own the whole process themselves, and they can do it all to some degree.
Yeah, it's absolutely true. Everyone does own the end-to-end process, but people do specialize. So what I try to do is work with our team and partner people up who have strengths in different areas so that they can help each other and coach each other in regards to those areas. And then I think your second question was around like, what's my day?
Yeah.
Like, so my days really are very different. So I may have a week that's almost like 40 hours of meetings, and then I may have another week that I'm really like hands-on with my team, working to help them solve problems and go into their stakeholder conversations and help with those things, and even like to the point of doing learning management system administration. Like I'll even do that in some weeks. So every day is completely different. I would say a majority of my time is meeting with stakeholders and really to understand the needs in our area of the business.
Wow. Okay. So maybe this is going a different direction, but those meetings with the stakeholders, are you kind of like qualifying like the projects that your team is going to be working on and determining like if it's something that you can help support, or like how, yeah, are you kind of like that first layer between the other stakeholders and then your team, and you kind of facilitate that?
Yeah, so the way that our team currently works, and probably should provide some background to give more context. So we sit in an area of HR. So there's several different areas with main leaders, and then it kind of goes down. And so our area is Amazonian experience and technology, and within that org, we are employee services. So we sit in employee services, and what that encompasses is there's tons of different areas we support, from like work authorization and creating training to help people identify what documentation they need to bring on a global perspective to be authorized to work, to disability leave services, our COVID resource center, our employee resource center, immigration, background checks or screening services is what it's called. That's another one. Our disability leave services resource center. We have endless areas that we support within our org, and we support 3 different audiences. So people within our organization who are doing the roles, HR people who will be outside of our organization but needing to use our tools and processes, and then employees to understand those tools and processes and things. And so our team works based on like an intake form. So this is getting to your question. And when the intake comes in, it goes to my manager, and then she will route it to the correct learning manager. So it will come to me, and I'll have a due diligence conversation with that stakeholder to understand the needs of that project. And then what I will do is work with my team to identify who's going to be the best person to take that on. And it's really it's a democratic process. So we talk through like, okay, whose skills are best suited, who's worked in this area before, and who has capacity. And so that's kind of how we determine the projects and how they're taken on.
Nice. Okay, cool. That sounds like a fun environment to work in. I like it.
It is. It's fun. And we have endless amounts of projects. I think we've got like almost close to 40 active ones right now that we're working on.
Wow. Yeah, that's a lot. Jeez.
So I'm in a lot of conversations, and I probably have at least like 3 to 5 new project conversations a week.
Wow. Okay. Wow. I see. So busy times. Not that I expected anything less, but okay, cool. So I think that answers that question. Well, I see we had another question in the chat. I just added that. So again, if you want to see questions from the chat answer, just vote on them using this tab. Cool. So the next question we have here is about the difference between instructional design and learning experience design. I know we chatted about this a little. It seems like a popular question, and there are even some follow-up questions on that about whether people use them interchangeably or not.
Yeah, I love this question. And after being in the field for so long, I've seen so many like different titles pop up, and I am one of those people who has been impacted by that, because like I think like 6 or 7 years ago, I was a learning architect, and I'm like I was an instructional designer. I don't know, you know. So I think there's always going to be people who are using titles because they've heard about it, and it's popular, and so they're using the title, but the role and responsibility doesn't necessarily match that title. And when it comes to learning experience design, and when I'm working with my team, I want to be really intentional about that we're not just using a title because that's the popular title, but we're actually we're integrating that into the actual role. So a really huge part of what our team does is the user research and user experience of all of our projects. So not only are we looking at needs analysis and what do the learners need from that like learning perspective, but what is that experience look like? And if we're creating an e-learning, are they able to go through it and get to that one resource that they need right away? How long is it going to take? Are they finding these things useful? So we're really actively iterating on our user research process. We do focus groups now. That's a new thing that we hadn't done before. We do usability testing. We also we look at doing user interviews as well. And so we do that in 3 different parts of our process now. We do it before we get into design, after design when we're looking at prototypes, and then after development. And it depends on the project because every project's different and some may need it and some may need just a part of that. So it's really dependent on the project specifications. But the user experience piece and like understanding the user is the biggest part when it comes to learning experience design, because you're designing those experiences for the user and they have to be usable and they have to be applicable.
Yeah, that's always the impression I got about learning experience design, is that it definitely emphasized that the user, putting the user at the forefront. What does the user need? What is the user's experience going to be like with this learning product, whatever that may be? So I do like it. I think the term definitely does signify that piece of it. But then it's also, I mean, how I view it is like if you're doing good instructional design, like you will be putting the user at the front of it. So it's like this is like a way. It's like good instructional design is probably learning experience design. And I like too how it's thinking it more about a learning experience instead of creating like an information-based e-learning course.
Exactly. Yeah, because the whole thing is not thinking about, oh, we have to create an e-learning or it needs to be a video, but what in this instance is going to be the best solution for that end user. And the way that we design it, is that going to be the best way? Because in instructional design, you may say, oh, a video's good or an e-learning is good, but the design, people aren't necessarily saying like, oh, it should be designed in this way, but like we're doing an e-learning, we're putting the content in there. But even if you create practice activities and things, you have to think about how you're creating it. What does the UI look like? Is the person able to use it? So it's more about, what is going to be the best solution for that person and making sure that that's the way that it's designed works as well.
Yeah. Cool. So I think the big takeaway there is whatever you call it, instructional design or learning experience design, like do what you're saying, put the user at the forefront, put yourself in their shoes, and think consciously about what that experience will look like and design for it. Good. Cool. All right, we're getting into a popular question now. How important is an online portfolio in the hiring process? And maybe before you dive into that, can you talk about your role in the hiring process? Because I know you're a manager, but I know Amazon has a very specific process.
We do have a very specific process. I don't know that I could really talk to that. I'm not sure how much I'm allowed to share on that.
Yeah.
But I think just in general, when we're talking about portfolios, it's very important to have a portfolio regardless of the type of role that you're in. So if you're not a designer or developer and you're an instructional designer, have a portfolio of some storyboards, and they don't have to be from your work. It could be something that you put together on a passion project. You'll see on my portfolio, everything that I have they're completely passion projects. I have tons of work related to work, but I can't show it to people. So I go and create my own kind of snippets of things. And one of the first things that most hiring managers that I have talked to are looking for is, as soon as they get a resume, they look for that link to your portfolio. That is the first thing that I've been told people are looking for. And that's really going to help them understand the type of work that that person does and their skill set. And that's so important in that whole hiring process. When I've been talking to a lot of these hiring managers, they're looking for it. And I appreciate, even if someone sends me their portfolio, like send me your portfolio, like comment it on a post. If the people that do that, I think will probably get noticed first.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. There is a follow-up question to that, which I think will be good to discuss. What are you looking for when you view a candidate's portfolio?
That's a really great question as well. Yeah. What I'm looking for, well, it's really going to depend on the role, right? But what I'm looking for when it comes to design is I want to see consistency, and I want to see consistency in the user interface, in the styling. I want to, one of the biggest things that's like, that I don't usually see, but when I see it, I'm like, wow, this person is good. Accessibility. When I can see a design that's using like high contrast, that's accessible, I'm absolutely blown away, because that takes it kind of a step above. So I would say that's like raising the bar completely.
Nice.
And presenting the content in a way that's easy to digest, and especially if you provide context around the content. And I think one of the things I would say a lot of hiring managers are looking for when it comes to work is diamonds in the rough. You don't have to be perfect. Like, don't harp on being perfect. Like, show that you have those like general skills, because then you can know that that person can be coached, or that person can help continuously improve. And you want to see someone who has a variety of work, because that shows they're constantly learning new skills. So have maybe a short video, have a user guide, because that's going to show that you're investing in yourself in a variety of different ways.
Nice. Okay, really good answer. So the consistency in the design you were talking about, you mean like buttons and colors, like it's not like all over the place, like click next, click a button over here, like cool.
Yeah, absolutely. That's one of the biggest things that I see, because I found, and this is something that I could have done better in the beginning. When I first started doing design, I was like just really into like, oh, I'm going to do animations and gamification and doing all these different things. And there's just these like foundational skills in design when it comes to consistency and styling and things like that really help improve a project. And then you can start to think about some of those other things.
Yeah.
So I always try to help people understand, like, it doesn't have to be the glitz and the glam, like simple. Yeah. Sometimes simple is the best thing.
Exactly. Yeah, I was just having this conversation earlier. It's like you don't need to do anything super fancy. Like using some basic design skills, like you can make a really clean, like intuitive layout just with like shapes and text. So, yes. So yeah, I'm glad Dan says that the portfolio is 80% of his hiring decision. Nice.
Oh wow, yeah. See, yeah. There you got a real testimonial there.
True. All right, I think we are ready to move on to the next question. If anyone has any follow-up questions about portfolios, definitely add them. Yeah, I'm glad you brought up accessibility. Yeah, accessibility too, because that isn't brought up a ton. Like you definitely see it brought up, but interesting to hear that would be really valuable from a hiring manager's perspective to make those considerations.
And it wouldn't be something that like I would look for as a make or break. It would be a bonus. I would be like, wow, like this person really is like, there's some little things like that. I mean, that's a big thing, but there are things like that where you go, yeah, like that's something. And the other thing I think that might be helpful is I really love when I see people's work and I think like, wow, I never would have thought about that. Like I'm blown away when someone teaches me something. That's something that's really important to me too.
Nice. Okay, good. I like that too. So maybe not do the common advice like build an e-learning on like how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Like actually try to teach something. Cool. Okay, good. That's a really good point. If you can teach the hiring manager something, then it's probably a good sign of your instructional design skills.
Yeah. In regards to the topic and also like the approach to things, like if it's an approach where I was like, wow, that's a way better approach than I would have even thought of to this project.
Okay. Cool. Okay, good. Nice. All right, so let's move on to the next one here. Oh wait, this is actually pretty similar. Maybe we should have asked this one first. What are your biggest considerations when hiring new instructional designers or learning experience designers? So maybe like what you're looking for in those candidates specifically. Maybe this will be really interesting on your team because you are looking for someone who has a little bit of the skill set and like the full range of the process.
Yeah, and something I just recently posted about this, and I don't know that this is like super specific. And again, like every team and role is going to be looking for potentially different things. So I can't speak for like all
Yeah,
learning
right.
managers across the world here.
Of course,
But
yeah.
one of the things that I look for, and I like to use the analogy of playing like a MMO, like a like
Yeah.
a online
Massive
massively
multiplayer online
multiplayer game.
world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so what I like to look for are people who are kind of generalists, like across the board. Like they have at least like beginner skills or like get beginner intermediate skills in a lot of things. So it could be instructional design, it could be visual design, it could be like technology, it could be UX. And then look for people who fit a specialization and are
Right.
really good at like one thing. And I like to, I like Matt's comment there. I like to refer to it as like when you're playing a game with a group of people and you have like a boss that you have to defeat, you have someone who is going to be like doing damage to the boss. You have someone who's going to be healing the people who are like fighting, and you have people who are going to be like taking the damage from the boss in the boss
Mhm.
fight, and you have all these people who have all these skills that are different, and it makes up this team that they can work and help each other
Yeah.
on a project and build each other's skills in certain ways. um,
Yeah.
so I like to look at it as having like strengths that of people that all come together and help each other to accomplish something. And so when I'm looking for someone who has those foundational skills across the board, but then is filling a gap that we currently need on our team. And not just like a gap for like now, but a gap for 3 years from now. So like what are we
Right.
gonna need on the team 3 years from now even?
Right. Yeah. And I see this commonly referred to as like T-shaped, and I see you use that
Yes,
term in
the
like your
team.
recent article. It's like, you have the full breadth, but then you go deep into like one area. And yeah, it's really nice getting your perspective like as like leading this team, because you can see like, do we have someone who's really good with like the data and analytics? Like if that's this person's specialization, like let's bring them in here and they can help coach up the rest of the team. So like their skill set kind of makes like the whole team stronger, not just the one project they're working on. So I really like that. That's a good way to go about it, I think.
Yeah,
Cool.
and I like like the team that I'm on, like the people on my team are the most amazing people in the entire world. And like we all work so closely together, and like a typical like team meeting or like conversation we'll have is like, hey, I have this problem and I can't like solution for it. Who has ideas? And people bring these different perspectives, things that we would have never thought of to help us solve the problem. And like yesterday, I was having a conversation with a stakeholder about a new project, and we had already done some work in regards to this project. So we were like, why aren't they using like the materials that we've provided, like the performance support materials? And we're thinking through it, and they're like, well, if they need practice, like why don't we help them to like build their skills in using those performance support materials versus like creating a whole new
Mhm.
e-learning or something like that. And just people are constantly bringing different ideas to the table that it's not something I would have thought of or someone else may have thought of.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good point, and it probably says a lot about you as a manager that you like have facilitated that like kind of environment, like where people feel comfortable bringing those ideas, and it's like let's I don't know, because I know that I'm sure there are many environments where that people they don't really work like that, and it's just like here's what you need to build, now build it. So I think it's really cool like what you've built and that environment. Sounds like a cool team to be a part of for sure.
Yeah, they're some of the best people ever, just in general. but but like it's really cool too, because a lot of the folks like who have been on the team or are on the team, like they're part of the learning community. They're people who have been sharing on the eLearning Heroes. One of the guys on our team, he didn't report to me before I moved into the manager role. He reported to someone else, but I talked to him on eLearning Heroes before he ever joined Amazon, and I was like so impressed by his work, and I was like, wow, I can't believe I get to work with this person.
Yeah, awesome. Cool. Nice. People are really loving the game
Analogy.
analogy.
I mean, it's like that, but also you could do a restaurant analogy. Like you have people who are really great bakers, and then you have people who are great chefs, but just because you're a baker doesn't mean you can't cook, and just because you're a chef
Mhm.
doesn't mean you can't bake, but you don't specialize in those things. So
Right.
I could do analogies all day. I love analogies.
Yeah. Um, Alejandro really appreciated your perspective on diamonds in the rough because he's feeling pretty rough right now.
I'm gonna be honest with you. I will never look for someone who's a unicorn. I always look for someone who has potential. Like you want to find someone who has the potential. And one of the things like that I think I kind of struggle with when looking for people too is like how can you identify what's going to be easy to coach people on and build their skills on and what's not.
Yeah.
So that's something also that I'm thinking about more and more often, because there are things that it's going to be a lot harder and you'll have to be way more hands-on, probably like with that person on those things that are not easy to coach or build skills in quickly.
So I imagine a lot of people are here probably feeling some relief hearing you say that because a lot of people, especially in this field, they feel so much pressure to be so good at all of these different, areas of instructional design, and it's so interdisciplinary, so it seems so overwhelming. So I bet it's relieving hearing that. But could you what are your latest thoughts on things that would be harder to coach? So if you have those thoughts crystallized already.
Yeah, oh my goodness. Stakeholder engagement is really one that I think it takes a while and to build those skills in,
Okay.
because you're working with stakeholders. And I was watching your one with Kathy Moore, and she was coming on, and you're supposed to come at the project from a consultative perspective, right? And I think that's so hard to do for a lot of people, and sometimes it's hard to do for me. It's something like I'm improving on as well. So when you have a stakeholder who comes to you is adamant that they need an e-learning and it has to have a test and it needs to be done this way, like how do you handle that conversation?
Yeah.
That's a difficult conversation. And I really loved what Kathy Moore was saying on your crowdcast, where she was talking about how like don't even mention like the that it's an e-learning or this or that, but really try to get at like what is the problem that they are trying to solve and get that personal investment from them. But it's so much easier said than done. It's like one of those things
Yeah.
where it's like when you're in that moment and you have a stakeholder who's like, I need this tomorrow, and like, like like
Yeah.
they're really aggressive sometimes about these things. It takes a lot of skill and practice to do that. And so it's definitely something that is harder to coach people on, because you have to put them in that difficult conversation,
Hmm.
and really be able to provide that feedback.
Nice. Yeah. So to me, it's sounding like maybe soft skills, like this
It,
specific type of soft skills, maybe. But uh,
yeah,
yeah, Dan's referring to it as business acumen, and Matt's saying just about that conversation. Like, don't talk so much about the solution. Don't say, yeah, let's talk about that course. He's just saying, yeah, talk about the problem. Like, yeah, I'd be happy to follow up and talk about the problem you're experiencing further, and we'll identify the best solution or something. But yeah, I mean, Kathy Moore has tons of examples of that in her book, Map It. But like you said, it's definitely a lot easier said than done.
you have to be in the situation. It's like one of those things like, oh, like people will say like, oh, I'm going to do that when I go in the conversation. Then when they get in the conversation, they're like, oh my gosh, like that was intense. Like that was very intense.
Yeah.
And some people, it's harder because like I've seen over the years some people where like they'll just say yes because that's the easiest path. The path of least resistance is the easiest path for them. But in the
Hmm.
long run, like you look at the repercussions, like maybe that what we agreed to wasn't scalable. How does that impact the business? How does that impact our customers? There's so many different things like that. So I think that's one thing. Another thing that I really want to touch on that is important and is really hard to coach on are things that people don't want to do, that they're not passionate about. So if you're hiring someone to do design and you see like maybe like the fundamental skills, but they don't like design and they don't want to learn design, they're not going to learn design. Like they're not going to do necessarily like thrive in something that they're not passionate about or want to do.
Yeah.
So you want to make sure people are passionate about what they're going to be doing day to day. Otherwise, it's going to be so hard to get them to create high quality results.
Yeah, I see. So yeah, so it's like you can't really coach people into having a good attitude about these things or like having the passion for it. Like you should be passionate. Come on.
Yeah.
Can't really coach that. That makes a lot of sense. That's cool. Nice. Okay. I think we did it. We did good with that question. Okay. So moving on to the next one. It's someone D has to step out. Yeah. Thanks for coming by. See ya.
Thank
All
you.
right. We have a question from Joe. A completely hypothetical question here, right, Joe? What are the biggest challenges during the first year for someone who lands an ID role at a company like Amazon, especially if it's their first ID role?
Well, I can speak to it not being my first ID role and what was challenging for me then, but I'll try to imagine what it would be like for my first ID role. So one of the first things that's really amazing about Amazon that I love is we have this huge learning community, and it's a lot bigger than it was 5 years ago when I joined. So we've got like a lot of people may know like Kristen Anthony's there.
Yeah.
We've got Mark Oler. We've got Bill McDonald, who he's like the CMI5 guy. Like we've got all of these like amazing people who are actively working with the community and coaching and helping people. So that's the really, really good thing about it. So if you're coming in and it's like your first year there, like you have these amazingly like talented people that are going to be there to help you in the community and help you navigate that. When it comes to like my first year, and one of the things that was I think difficult for me is that when people say a big company like Amazon is like ambiguous, like there's a lot of unknowns, like no one's going to tell you like you have to do things this way or that way. So I was just having trouble, I think, in the beginning navigating that, because your leadership is constantly changing. Sometimes people are coming in that hadn't been there like the day before, and we move so fast, so things are constantly changing, and so you have to be able to so quickly adapt to change. So for instance, like we had a project, I think the other week, where they were launching a new tool, and we had 5 days to turn around like a complete e-learning to go to like 30,000 people. To be able to like do that, you have to know what to give up and what to focus on, and that could be so uncomfortable with people who are used to like, okay, I've got like 3 months to work on this. And so that's really difficult, I think. Something that I've seen with just like people in general joining bigger companies, when you have to do things really quickly and not have all the information or answers.
So the challenge is like, is it prioritizing or just working towards the best solution you can given all of the constraints, you would say?
Yeah, I would say it's probably both, because there's going to be a lot of unknowns, and you have to be able to quickly weigh like, what are the risks? How can I mitigate the risks? How do I navigate and get the right people on board in this project, even because there's so many different areas within the company as well.
Right. And you were mentioning some of the people at the company being really willing and open to like coaching the rest of the community. So would you say like leaning on the, like networking within the company and talking to people who have been there longer and like reaching out to them and asking them, I guess, like internal networking, like would you say that's an important part of your first year?
It's so important. And I constantly have projects that need to go out to other learning teams audiences, like in operations, or different areas. And so for me, it's really important for me to be connected to these other learning teams to say, hey, like we have a project that's coming out that's impacting your audiences. Like, what's the best way to get to your customers? Because they're going to know way more about their customers or learners than I'm going to know. So really being able to navigate that whole ecosystem and use those resources and in that way and get buy-in, because you don't want to necessarily, I don't want to say step on toes, but you don't want to put something out there for someone else's audience when maybe they already did something, or they have a better way to promote it, or maybe they'll see a gap. So just really understanding like how to navigate that is important.
Yeah, that seems important. Good points. I wouldn't have thought of that. Nice. Um, Julie mentioned she didn't realize Kristen Anthony is with you, Rockstar Team.
So Kristen is not currently on my team. Kristen was on my team,
Oh,
and Kristen's the most amazing person ever. Kristen does amazing work for anyone who's seen Kristen's work. I'm sure they
yeah.
would agree.
Oh yeah.
But Kristen really helped us on our team to be able to shape our LXD process and our user research process. And Kristen is the most detail-oriented person. I just have so many good things to say about Kristen. Is
Yeah.
basically what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, Kristen's amazing. When I was getting into the field, I was using so many of like her resources and getting inspired from her, learning experiences. So I didn't know she was actually on your team. That's really cool. That's like power team right there.
Well, so Kristen was on our team, and now Kristen's in more of a tech position. So
Mm,
my team isn't like, we're not learning technologists, and that's something that Kristen's really passionate about. So Kristen's in more of like a learning tech role now, because our team's like more like you're focused on the end to end.
right.
So I can let Kristen speak to
Yeah. Yeah.
what they do. So
Cool. Cool. Okay. Nice. Well, thanks for that. This next question is we can transition into it nicely. It's about the specific LXD process that you and your team use. And I think you said Kristen helped you shape that. So I think it would be cool to just hear a bit more about that maybe.
Yeah, and in our design system for our team, and I wish I could share this, but I can't. I'm not allowed to like share what the actual
Yeah.
stuff looks like. But within our design system, we actually have like a visual of our entire process that embeds all of the different documents we use. So like there will be a block that's like the initial contact, like here's our meeting notes template that we use. Then it goes into like the kickoff meeting, and here's like our learning plan template, and I click a button and it opens it. And we basically have like our whole entire process outlined. There's blocks for user research. So you click that and it opens like a whole folder of all of like our user research resources and templates. And so that whole process basically like encompasses our end-to-end flow if we incorporate everything. But depending on the project, people kind of will skip some of the steps. Like user research we may not need on something that's like, hey, we just need to create like a user guide on this like one little thing, so like maybe we don't need to do user research
Yeah.
on that. So but it's all outlined. And so another really important part of our process is quality assurance. So on every single project, I have another learning experience designer who does QA on the project, and they're brought in at every key milestone to audit the project to make sure that it's the highest standard that we could have it. So they look for things like, does the content make sense in the context of the design? Is it accessible? Like, are there even grammatical errors or little things like that? So that's a huge part of our process too, is our quality assurance. And
Nice.
that's really, really important.
Cool. And it sounds like how you have this built up. It's like you have all this performance support like for your
Yes.
team.
We are like the learning team that learns, and like
Yeah.
we practice what we preach. Like, so we have all of that. Like, we create documentation or videos on everything. And I mean, I would say there's so much more that we could do, but it's like
Always.
we're flying the plane while building the plane always.
Yeah, yeah. Nice. Okay, cool. But yeah, it seems like that keeps it very iterative and you're adapting and good stuff.
Yeah. And our process is updated every single week, because one person on our team, their role across the team is to do UX and visual design, but they also own the design system and doing updates to that. So it's a living, breathing thing that we're like constantly evaluating and changing.
Nice, cool. Okay. Nicole said that she loved your design system session from DevLearn in 2018. And Becky asked a question about design systems, but I added it to that tab so we can vote on that. I want to make
Okay.
sure we get to them. Cool. All right. That was a good answer. Yeah. Too bad you can't show us everything. I'm sure we could do like a whole session on that if you were allowed to. It sounds so interesting, but we'll move on. I think it was a good answer given the constraints. So this is a good one. I definitely want to make sure we get to this because I'm sure a lot of people here are interested in this. How did you transition from a learning experience designer to a learning experience design manager? So like transitioning into leadership in this space.
Yeah, and this was something like I was thinking about for probably like 2 years before it actually happened.
Yeah.
And it was really, really difficult. And I was just talking to some folks on LinkedIn, Keith Anderson and then Tim Slade about imposter syndrome. And
Yeah.
so when I was on our team, we had two people who were peers of mine who were like they had folks that were directly reporting to them, so they were people leaders in their respect. And I was always like, why not me? Like, why? I was always like, why can't I do this? And the thing that I would say, like, that I regret the most is not like, no one knows what you want in your career. No one's gonna like do that for you or guess. You really have to drive your own career and make it known to your managers or leaders that, hey, this is the career path that I want to be on, and how can I get on this path? And
Nice.
so I was really intentional. I actually left. I left the team that I'm currently on, and I went to a technical curriculum developer role because I was like, what I'm doing as an individual contributor is not fulfilling me at this point. In what I was in the role that I was in, so I was like, I really like tech. Like, let me try this out. I did not like. I did not like that role. Let's just say that. Like, that wasn't for me. So I came back to the team, and I made sure like my manager knew, like, this is something, like, I don't know if I'm going to be good at it, but like I I feel so passionate about finding problems on the team and coming up with solutions outside of like just my normal work, and helping to get people to adopt those solutions and being able to see like what's the outcome. So how much money are we saving? Like, what are we doing differently? And also like being able to coach people. And I really was doing that very informally. And so
Right.
I was very intentional then, like, hey, like, I know these people got a shot. Like, can I, like, just let's test it out, like do a dry run type of a thing, like pilot. And I was just really intentional that I wanted to do it. So we tried it out, and I think I had 5 direct reports like when I first started, which is a lot for a first time manager. So I got on that path, and I didn't look back. And I think one of the things people were also curious about is because the people who were on my team were my peers before too. And
Mm,
so people were like, well, isn't that awkward? And I was like, well, I don't know, because I feel like we're also friends. And at the same time, I think that it was awkward in some ways as well.
mm.
But I think the thing about it is just being really intentional about what you want and saying, like, what do I need to do to get there? Like, what do you need to see from me? And how can I get there? Like, what's my path?
Nice. Okay, good. Yeah, I think that's really good advice. And that's what you did when you came back. Yeah, you just told your manager, this is what I want. I'm willing to take the steps to get there. Can you help me, I guess like
Yeah.
identify that best path, give me the opportunities I need to like prove myself in this capacity, like that sort of thing.
Yeah. And it's a reversible decision too. Like,
Mm.
if for some reason it wasn't something that I had a strength in, or something that I didn't enjoy, or, maybe it wasn't working out in whatever way, it was something that could be reversed. It wasn't something that's, set in stone either. And I think the thing that I tell people, like, hey, like, why don't, like when you're talking with your leadership, and if it's something you're interested in, say like, can we do a pilot? Can I like work with maybe like one person? It doesn't have to be 5 people. So I think there's different ways to go about it, but just being really intentional about what you want your career path to be and why is really important.
Nice. Okay, good. Yeah, great advice. Nice. All right, let's see what we have next on the list here. I think we probably covered this question. It's about if LXDs should have a broad skill set across ADDIE or a deep skill set in one part of the process. And I think the answer is both, based off of what you were saying. So yeah, know what goes into each of those steps and have some experience in each of them. But if there's one that you're particularly interested in and you want to pursue deeper and specialize in, then go full steam ahead. Right?
Yes. Yeah.
Nice. All right. What are the learning design processes you and your team use at Amazon? Is evidence-based learning one of them? Can you shed some light upon it? So I think we touched on the process. There's this question about evidence-based learning in here. Did you have anything to say about that?
I guess what like what the definition of that, I suppose, would be?
Yeah, that's what I was wondering too. I'm wondering if maybe it's about like
I think it's
results
sometimes,
or evaluation, like what kind of, I don't know.
yeah, I think it's sometimes harder to answer questions with things when they're not predefined, but I can kind of try to touch on that. And so something that we try to do on every project is have a data source to compare against. So what do we want to do? What's the KPI? So like, do we want to reduce defects? Could be like pay defects or something like that, because we work with a lot of like time and attendance systems. So
Right.
we want to reduce pay defects by X amount, X percentage. How can we look at that? There's not necessarily like a direct correlation per se, but so maybe we create a module or performance support to help people in regards to like correcting missed punches or something like that. I don't know. And then we pull in data from like a system that shows like there's X amount of defects after these people have taken this learning, so we can compare and contrast. So I think with every project, like for us, it's really important to say like, do we have something we can compare against from the beginning and KPI?
Yeah, I love that. I think maybe I took that there because that's what I'm interested in, and it's like following up on the Kathy Moore like action mapping. Like I love it.
Yes.
But people are suggesting in the chat, like Helen and Matt, saying maybe it's about like learning science and instructional design, like principles and methodologies. Like, do those formal like processes and principles play a role in your process, or yeah, what consideration is given to those? I guess is the question.
Yeah, I don't think it's something like that we're like super intentional about. It's something we could always be better at. And one of the things like we talked about is how we don't even currently do like action mapping. Like we'll go through like a very like light needs analysis, and we'll talk through, okay, here's our goal of the project, like here are the objectives that like go up into the goal. But I think we could do so much of a better job like on our team in regards to that learning science and also just that analysis phase of things as well, because the biggest hurdle that we have is that our projects go so quickly. And so sometimes you get a project and it's like, this has to be done in the next like two days or next like week, because we have a system launching or a date that you can't be moved. Like,
yeah, wow.
So it's just really hard to flex and integrate that in.
Yeah, that's the impression I get, and that's what it's like on my freelance projects too. Like the pace is always fast. Like you're picking and choosing from like different models, different processes, and building kind of your own. So cool. I think that's a common approach. So here's a question. Do you still get hands-on with the design and development tasks now that you're a manager?
Yes, I do.
Nice.
I'm starting to hear the echo.
Uh-oh. Wow, we made it 50 minutes and now the echo's creeping in.
I know. So yeah, I do get really hands-on. And so it depends on the project and what's going on. So I mainly get hands-on when our team is like way above capacity. So we have these capacity planners that we fill out every month, and it shows like all the projects that we're working on, and people say, I'm spending X% of time on this one, this one, this one. Everyone's at over 100% at this point. And so when people start to get so bogged down with things, I will jump in and say like I will never let people like fail. I will always be there and say like, okay, what can I give up to help them? And then in retrospect, like, okay, what can we do differently moving forward so this doesn't happen again? Right. So I have to constantly be like jumping in, but then also saying like, okay, now what are we going to do differently? How can we make this better next time? So if everyone's like super busy, because the work's never going to end, right? It's always it's constantly going to be coming in. So we have to continuously improve on our processes. So I will jump in, I will do design, I will do learning administration or learning management administration. Like I will do everything, but I don't always do everything. Like I try to really make sure that's not my main job, but I'm just doing that when people really need it.
Right. Okay. That makes sense. Good. And Divya is here in the chat, and she mentioned evidence-based learning, meaning designing something based on the science and actual results. So it seems like we hit both of those elements. So nice.
Yeah.
Hope that helped answer your question, Divya. And then Helen shared a helpful link, learningscienceweekly.com for that evidence-based learning stuff. So good. All right. Let's see. On that question we just asked, Holly had a follow-up question. Is it easy for you to let go and let your team make decisions without letting your opinions sway them, even in cases when you would have approached certain decisions differently?
Yes, and I will constantly. Oh, so I just had this conversation like 2 weeks ago with someone where I was like, I don't agree with your approach, but you should do it because like you believe in it and you said and you have a path forward. And I do not always agree with people, but it's important for people to like they're on the project. I'm not on the project. It's important for people to lead their own projects and evaluate the risks and mitigate the risks on their own, and to like have that backup plan and to do the things. And it's okay to fail. Like I tell my team all the time, like I'm like, you can fail. I'm like, try new things, do things differently. It's what you do afterwards and like what you learn from that is the most important thing. Like
Right.
we try to like mitigate those risks, but you're not always going to. So I don't necessarily always agree with people, but I'm like you can do what you think's best on the project, as long as like you make sure like it's in the best interest of like our teammates and our customers and our stakeholders. Like that's the most important thing.
Right.
So I would definitely say like I have opinions about things, but my opinion is like don't follow my opinion. Like I may not be right all the time. Like I'm not always right. Maybe not even a good percentage of the time.
Yeah. Nice. And yeah, I love it. Yeah, just the iteration and the adapting, like it just seems so apparent in every step of this process and then like everything you're doing. So it definitely seems like you're practicing what you're preaching. Patricia says you sound like an awesome manager. And yeah, I think if there's anything clear from this conversation, it's probably that, just from how you're talking about these things. Like, yeah, it sounds like a team like anyone would probably want to be a part of. So I think that's really cool. Nice.
I hope so. I don't
know. Okay. Well, I think it looks like we will have time to answer maybe a couple of more questions.
Oh, Dom's here. Oh, Dom's on my team.
Who is?
Dom.
Oh, Dom's on your team and Dom's here.
Yeah. Hi, Dom. Dom's awesome.
Yeah. Hopefully he heard you say all the nice things about him earlier. All right. So we have a question from Dorota about how you handle difficult SMEs or collaboration with people who are supposed to provide you with content or information. So you touched on that a little bit, right?
Yeah, and yeah. I'm not like the main person working with the SMEs, so it would be more the LXDs on the team. But for me, working with difficult SMEs is really trying to understand like where they're coming from and what might be going on, for them to be approaching it in more of a difficult way. Like, are they getting pressure from like their managers to get something done? Like what are they really trying to get out of it? Like how can we kind of see it from their perspective? I will say, hopefully I don't pronounce her name wrong. Connie Malamed. Is it Malamed?
That's what I think, but I haven't heard anyone else pronounce it.
She did this such amazing workshop with Miriam, and I would butcher Miriam's last name if I said it, but they did an amazing workshop at Learning Technologies where they gave you personas of difficult stakeholders, and we had to like work with these personas and try to solve for them in the workshop. Like, how would you approach this difficult stakeholder? And one of the things like we've been talking about on the team, like really briefly, was like, what if we had personas about like common situations like we've been brought, and like how would you go about solving for those? Because it's really hard when you're trying to what is it called, something without authority, like influencing without authority, because you don't have that authority. Like you're not, that SME is not reporting to you. Like how do you get them to give you the materials, come to the meetings? How do you get them to be a partner? Because you really want them to be a partner. And it's really easier said than done. So yeah. I think something like that would definitely be very helpful.
So what I'm hearing is it sounds like empathy and trying to empathize with that SME, and then also considering like what their goals are and like how you can speak to their goals to help them see like you're both working towards like a common goal. Is that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, correct. Yeah.
Cool. Nice.
I go on tangents about things, so it may not have been super clear.
All good. We have a couple more questions above like 5 upvotes, so maybe we can get to them. I think this one's gonna be, I'd really like to get your perspective on this one from Ryan. Ryan's a mid to senior level in all aspects of ID and e-learning development. What are you predicting are the most valuable skills in the next 2 to 3 years in the ID world?
Ooh, that's such an interesting question. And I want to say it doesn't have to do with technology or
Right.
those types of skills. Because when I think back to even 5, 6, 7 years ago, I think the same skills really do hold true, to be honest. It's not like back in 2013, 14, we were talking so much about everyone needs to know about gamification. Gamification was that buzzword and everyone was into it. And looking back, I would never be today, ooh, I really was looking for that person with those gamification skills. I think it's still those foundational skills that we would be looking for.
Yeah.
And especially at a big company, you want to find someone who can really think forward looking and future looking and saying how can we scale if we're going to be in X amount of countries and doing these different things, having that ability to think in that way and not just think in a one-time learning e-learning course. It's going to be important.
Nice. Okay, great answer. That's where I thought you might go with it, but good to hear. Cool.
I wish I could say AI or something like that.
Yeah,
but that's not, I don't think that's the right answer.
Yeah. Cool. Okay, let's get to this last question about 5 upvotes, and then we'll call it a wrap. Sarah is asking about the techniques you use for coaching and giving your team feedback, particularly when they've gone a little off track with a project or assignment.
Oh gosh, maybe Dom could speak to this. I think the most important thing is having just really open, candid conversations with people about things. The thing that I pride myself most on is being super candid and with people in general and trying to understand why something's happening or why something's not happening and saying okay, if you have 7 projects you're working on and maybe you're missing a deadline for something, hey, let's talk through reprioritizing things, or let's talk through why this isn't happening, or getting to the root cause of things and just really trying to understand why is this happening or not happening. And it's more than anything about just having a conversation and not going into anything. Never blame people. You should never blame people. You don't know what is going on. I'm not in every conversation, so it's really trying to understand and ask better questions to be able to solve problems.
Awesome. Okay. So just transparency and then just really trying to understand, not, oh, you caused this big problem. What's wrong with you?
But there are people, and that's honestly one of the things that made me want to move into a people leader position, because I've had managers in the past who they didn't even want to have a conversation. They're you should just do your work and get it done. And why didn't you do it? And not really empathizing and understanding the full picture. And for me, I think it's so important to have someone there to listen to you and to understand you. And having been there myself, I have the understanding of being in that person's shoes as well. And everyone's going through different things as well. So it's just important to get their perspective and help uncover what's going on.
Nice. Okay. Great answer. All right. Well, thank you, Mel. I think that is a wrap for all of the questions. Let's all give it up for Mel in the chat. And check out Mel's website, melslearninglab.com, and subscribe to this side up if you haven't already on LinkedIn.
Yay. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. All right. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone. Have a good day.